Today, I'd like to share the story of Circe from Greek mythology. This was a request, and if there's anything you want to hear, leave a comment down below. For now, lay back and enjoy our story. Circe was the daughter of Helios, the ever-burning titan of the sun, and she was neither wholly divine nor eternally mortal. She existed in the liminal space between the two, too powerful for the world of men, yet too independent for the realm of gods. Among her kin, she was an anomaly. Where her father burned with ceaseless fire of the heavens, Circe's power was quieter, more insidious. She did not command the sun nor wield the strength of the seas like her mother, but she understood the hidden forces of the world, the slow and deliberate pull of magic woven into nature itself. Her youth was spent among the courts of the Titans, watching the gods with fascination. But Circe found herself drawn away from the opulence of her father's halls, retreating to the forgotten corners of the world, places where divine light did not shine so fiercely. It was there she first encountered the magic that would define her existence, the power of transformation. Unlike the Olympians, whose strength came from their dominion over natural forces, Circe's magic was born from knowledge. She studied the proverbs of herbs and the rhythm of the earth, the way a whispered incantation could shift reality itself. Her first taste of true power came not from ambition but from heartbreak. She fell in love with a mortal, Glaucus, a fisherman whose simplicity fascinated her. When he confessed his love for another, Circe, blinded by jealousy, sought to change his fate. She brewed a potion of divine potency, meant to turn him into a god, and it worked. Glaucus emerged from the waters reborn, immortal and mighty. But rather than remaining by Circe's side, he scorned her affections and turned her to the sea nymph Scylla. Rage and sorrow consumed Circe, and with a curse spoken in fury, she transformed Scylla into a monstrous creature, her body twisted with tentacles and snapping maws. It was this act that sealed Circe's fate. The gods, who feared her growing power, exiled her to the remote island of Aeaea, a place beyond the reach of both mortals and immortals. But if they sought to silence her, they had gravely underestimated her resilience. Aeaea became Circe's dominion. She shaped the land with her will, filling it with creatures of her own design. She mastered the art of potion making, crafting elixirs that could alter the very fabric of a being's essence. She could turn men into beasts, strip gods of their strength, and, with the right spell, command the winds themselves. It was on this island that she would forge her own legend, one that would be whispered throughout the annals of time. But even in isolation, the world found its way to her shores. As one day, a ship carrying war-weary men arrived at Aeaea's shores. Among them was Odysseus, the king of Ithaca. He was cursed to wander the seas by the wrath of the gods. His men, eager for rest, feasted in Circe's halls, but then revelry turned into horror when, with a flick of her wrist, Circe transformed them all into swine. Yet Odysseus himself was no ordinary man. With the aid of Hermes, he resisted her magic, confronting Circe as an equal rather than a victim. It was not defiance that stayed her hand, but frustration. Here was a man unlike any other she had known before, cunning, resilient, and untamed. Instead of making him her enemy, she made him her lover. Their time together, though, was fleeting, as were all things in Circe's life. She aided him in his journey, warning him of the dangers that lay ahead, guiding him through the perils of the underworld and beyond. Long after after Odysseus had left her shores, Circe remained on Aeaea, alone, but never idle. Time passed differently for her than it did for mortals, and yet the weight of eternity pressed upon her shoulders. Though she had once wielded isolation like a shield, she began to wonder if the gods had not cursed her with exile, but something far worse. An endless solitude. And then, one day, fate intervened once more. Once again, from the crashing waves came a young man, barely more than a boy. His body was weary from travel. He was Telegonus, her son, the child she had borne in secret after Odysseus had departed, raising him on Aeaea without his father's knowledge. Though she had tried to prepare him for the world beyond their island, she knew he had always yearned for something more, and now he had returned, but not with joy in his heart. His hands were stained with blood. Telegonus had ventured to Ithaca in search of his father, desperate to meet the man whose stories had shaped his childhood. But prophecy is a cruel thing, and fate had other designs. When he arrived, Odysseus mistook him for an enemy. A skirmish broke out, and in the chaos, Telegonus struck the final blow that ended his father's life. The irony wasn't lost on Circe. Odysseus, who had defied gods and monsters alike, had been slain by his own son. Telegonus was consumed with grief, and Circe, though mourning Odysseus in her own way, did not let sorrow blind her from what had to be done. She summoned Telemachus, Odysseus's other son, and Penelope, his ever-faithful wife, back to Aeaea, offering them sanctuary. It was an unprecedented act. Circe, the feared sorceress, opening her home to those who had every reason to despise her. Yet, as days passed, something unexpected happened. Telemachus, once filled with suspicion, began to see the truth of Circe's heart. Penelope, weary from years of suffering, found in Circe not an enemy, but an equal. Another woman who had lived in the shadow of men, forced to carve out her own path in a world ruled by gods and kings. For the first time in her long, long life, Circe was no longer alone. But the gods, ever watchful, were not finished with her. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, came to Aeaea, seeking Telemachus as a champion for her own designs. She offered him glory, the chance to leave behind the quiet life of his father and forge a new legend in his name. But Telemachus refused. He had seen the cost of ambition, the burden of being a pawn in the games of the gods. Instead, he chose a different fate, one that would tie him to Aeaea and to Circe herself. Circe, too, faced a choice. For centuries, she had bent beneath the will of the divine, shaped by the fears of men and gods alike. But she had learned the truth of her own strength. She had transformed others, but now she could transform herself. With her own hands, she brewed a potion unlike any other before it, not one of power, but one of release. She drank deeply, and in that moment shed her divinity. No longer a goddess, no longer bound by the whims of fate, she stepped forward as something greater, her own master, her own maker. And so, Circe left Aeaea, not as an exile, not as a prisoner of the past, but as a woman, finally free. Where she went, the myths do not say. Some claim that she lived out her days in quiet contentment with Telemachus, building a life that was wholly her own. Others believed she wandered around the world, continuing to defy the gods in subtle, unseen ways. But one truth remains unshaken. Circe's story was never one of conquest nor tragedy. It was the story of a woman who refused to be defined by the world around her. A sorceress who, after centuries of shaping the fate of others, finally claimed her